You're listening to Pole Parlour, a fun, inspiring podcast for all those bewitched by pole dance. Each week, your Madam Crimson Minxxx has candid conversation with unique, engaging individuals from within and around the pole dance community. Pole Parlour is passionate about preaching creativity, soulful sensuality, and empowerment through pole dance.
You know how we do.
Welcome everyone to Pole Parlour. This is episode 39, Amy Kim of Aerial Amy. I'm your host, Crimson Minxxx. This week on the podcast, we have pole dancer, teacher, and blogger Amy Kim. On this episode, we talk about how the online pole community has evolved since Amy started poling in 2007 and what inspired her to start one of the world's first pole dance blogs, Aerial Amy. We also talk about how she learned to balance her career with her pole dance passion, and we get real about the realities of pursuing pole professionally and how it can be fulfilling to just keep pole as a hobby. And don't forget to check out Amy's post-podcast interview on the blog at poleparlour.com, where she shares her favorite photos, music, video, and more. And this is the last podcast of 2016. Make sure you follow at Pole Parlour on social media and sign up for the newsletter at poleparlour.com so you can stay posted on all the new fun stuff coming in 2017. And now, here is Amy. Welcome, Amy Kim, to the Pole Parlour podcast. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, so excited to have you here today. Let's jump on in. For how long have you been poling, and how did you first discover pole dance?
I started somewhere around 2007. I discovered it because a friend of mine at the time, and she actually wasn't a super close friend, she was just somebody I knew online. There used to be an online journaling community called Zanga.com, and she was somebody that I followed.
Oh.
She had just recently had a baby, and she wrote this entire blog where she was talking about how she found this pole dancing class, and it sort of reawakened the woman in her, and she had just had the best experience ever while she was in this class. It was like the only thing that she did just for herself, and she was rediscovering and redefining her sexuality as a new mother. So she wrote this entire blog post, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to go check this out. It was in New York, so I went and I took an intro class. It was at S Factor, New York. This was back when there weren't any other pole dancing studios that I was aware of in New York, and I took my first class, and I was just super hooked from the first second that I took a class. It was like instant love. Yeah.
Wow. And so do you even keep in touch with her anymore? Do you know if she...
Yeah, totally.
Okay,
yeah,
she's still into it?
She's not still going. She's had another child, and she's sort of out in Long Island, which is an hour and a half or 2 hours away. She's, life changes, but she does keep up with me, and every once in a while I get a really sweet message from her just saying like, hey, I saw, this blog or this Instagram post or this Facebook thing, and I can't believe you're still doing it. It's so amazing. And I totally credit her. Like every time I talk to people about it, I'm like, yeah, Jen totally was the one who hooked me up with S Factor and with pole. And yeah, I have so much that I owe her for that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and a reason why a lot of people know you is because of your blog, Aerial Amy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you start your blog?
So I'd have to check the internet, like my archives. I think I started in 2009.
Okay.
And this was like, people that are sort of old school talk about back in the day when there was just YouTube, and there wasn't very much online community anywhere. Facebook wasn't really a thing. And I started this blog because I could feel that there was a growth in the community, and I could feel that there was sort of this critical mass that we were reaching. And I've always been like a super researcher, like an early adopter of everything. I'm analyzing, before I book a trip or before I buy anything, I'm always like checking online reviews, and I'm looking up all of the different things about, options A, B, and C. And so I was the same way with pole, and I was always looking up like, oh, I need new booty shorts. Oh, I need like what can I use lotion when I'm pole dancing? Oh, like what are the fundamental things that I need to know before I do this pole move? So I've always just been sort of that person, and I would go to the studio and I would always have stuff with me that people were always asking me, where'd you get that? How'd you know about that? How'd you find that? And I was like, okay, let me just start putting this all on the internet somewhere, and then every time I get this question, I can just respond to it. So it started as like really, really early on. It was just intended to be a sharing resource. It was like, hey, I know these things. I seem to know more about them than a lot of other people, so let me just put it online and see if it helps anybody. Yeah.
Wow. Were there other blogs at the time, or not really, or a few, or?
Really not that I was aware of at all. So I think like every time somebody searched pole dancing and blog, like I was the only one that came up for like a year or something, maybe 2 years. And I think that, like I was saying, there was a critical mass. There was sort of just this like growth in the community that was happening. So I started the blog, I think the same year that a couple of studios in New York, or within 2 years of a couple of studios in New York opening, and B-Spun was opening, and all these other studios were coming into being, and people were shifting from being YouTube only into trying to leverage their online presence, and communities were building. We were all on Studio Vina at the time, so it was just this influx of all of this communication and sharing of knowledge and information that was all happening. So, yeah.
That's smart, because I know how I discovered you was when I first started pole dancing, and this wasn't until 2013, but I Googled like pole dance blog, and you're the first one that comes up. So, I mean,
Crazy.
yeah, it still is top rated. And also, Studio Vina comes up all the time. Can you explain to us what that is?
Oh man, Studio Vina was like pole Facebook. it was literally so. Vina was this woman who, her and her husband started this website. It was studiovina.com, and it was called Studio Vina because she offered online lessons. And so that's where the studio part of the name came from. But she also had this online community that she had attached to her website, that was ostensibly for people who are actually taking the classes to ask her questions, give her feedback, just share and be part of, again, an online community. And it was actually like the only place that pole dancers were connecting online for a period of time that I was aware of. There was also pole junkies, and there were other communities in different countries, but this was the only one that us Americans had. So I think a lot of the people that have been pole dancing for the last 8 years or so, like that was where we all first initially met online. And I'm in contact with a lot of people still who are, the people that were part of that community that are still part of pole are still doing great things, and still really enmeshed and working hard to make waves and do good things. So it's been nice to have that sort of like incubator that we were all talking. And back in those days, pole was a lot less polished. People were we were all learning at the same time. We were all learning the same things at the same time. And this was back in the day when like nobody could shoulder mount. That was the biggest trick. If you could shoulder mount or do an extended butterfly, you were like big dog. So we were all trying to learn the same shit at the same time. And we were all sort of in that same learning phase. And there wasn't a lot of marketing. There wasn't like PR, there wasn't self-promotion, and so we were all coming from a really, I think, honest and open place. And the community was so small that it was like you would log in and it was like 15, 30, 100 of your friends that you talked to every day about the same obsession that you all had. So it was a really, really fun time. Yeah.
Yeah, I still will if I'm looking up something, I guess being curious like you do and just Googling around for answers about things, Studio Vina comment threads come up all the time. I don't even know if it's still active, to be honest with you. I wasn't planning on asking you that question until you brought it up. I was like, oh, yes. What is that, by the way?
Yeah, no, totally. Ask me anything, because apparently I've been around.
I know, and I think you've also been like a very conscious participant,
Yeah.
so, because of your blog, you have been very like active at knowing what's going on and recording it. And maybe you have more of like that knowledge base than people that were just participating and not actually blogging about it the whole time. So it kind of forces you, right? What else do you write about on the blog if people are thinking about checking it out? What kind of topics can they expect to find?
It's a huge, gigantic brain dump. I think that a lot of it, when I go through my archives, I see an evolution happening in the blog concurrently with what I saw happening in the community. So the initial 3-4 years of it probably are just me posting and sharing knowledge, just straight sharing knowledge about, what are the different poles that are available? What's the difference with the diameter? What kind of pole shorts are there to buy? I had one series that was like, what's in my pole bag? And it was literally just, the crap that I lug around every day and all the stuff that I've curated to actually have with me 24/7 when I'm pulling.
Which are questions people still have today, by the way. So that's like
totally.
evergreen content right there.
Totally. Evergreen, yeah.
Sorry, I used a nerd word.
Yeah, no, it was perfect. It totally made sense. So there's some content like that, and then it sort of shifted as I got a little bit more of a foothold in being an instructor, and that mentality shift and that sort of just change, and how that shifted my perspective on pole in general. I was thinking a lot about the differences being an instructor and a student, and how to have good energy in the studio and how to bring your best learning self all the time. And I also went through a master's in motor learning, which I stopped because of work. But I started taking this coursework because I was a pole instructor, and I found it really interesting to think about the psychology of learning movement. So I signed up. I was in a master's program at Columbia for a year and a half, and it was super nerd-tastic. It was just it was kinesiology, it was neuroscience, it was plasticity, it was the mechanics of movement, and how you cue, how you verbally cue, how you reiterate with getting people to repeat just in different ways to cement knowledge. So there was a whole phase of that where I was just super nerding out all the time about learning and teaching. And then I think more recently there's been, it's been tough, I'll be honest, I've had a lot of dormancy on the blog over the last couple of years. And I think part of that is because the blog was initially, it was for me to sort of speak to people, to share and to communicate knowledge. And then after a point, I just have started feeling like there's so much static. Like there's just so many people saying so many different things, and adding one more voice didn't seem to me like really what maybe the best use of time or the best use of energy. So I shifted to organizing a pole retreat, which we can talk about, Pole and Bound. And a lot of what I'd written about on the blog in the past few years has really been how you keep positivity through what we see now, right? There's so much social media, and it can be kind of overwhelming, and there's so much competition, and that can be kind of overwhelming. So it's how do you keep a really positive headspace, and how do you navigate the pole community and the pole world, and make sure that you come out hopefully happier and healthier on the other side. Yeah,
that makes sense, because that's the journey you're going through. From
totally.
You started off how do I do this?
Yeah.
And you got into, okay, hey, how do I teach other people to do this? And then it's all right, now we're all in this. How do we deal with this? So
yeah, totally.
Do you concentrate efforts on social media or YouTube or anything like that? Have you found that it's kind of shifted maybe?
I mean, I feel like I feel like I've been spending more time learning and less time speaking.
Cool.
So I've been doing a lot of just and life has shifted a lot, and the community has shifted a lot. A lot of things have changed, and so I've been doing a lot of just looking at Instagram and seeing what everyone's up to, and it's just super cool to see evolution happening like on a daily basis. There's so many things that are happening that you can see, like visible trends that you can see changing from month to month, which is wild. And on Facebook, it's been, as Facebook has changed too, like everything that changed with the feed and with all the algorithms and with what you're seeing in your feed and with all of the political everything that's been happening over the last year and a half.
It has
Just
leaked
been,
into the pole world too, yeah.
yeah, there's
How
been a
can it
lot of
not?
change. Right. I mean, and that's healthy. It's pole is one part of who we all are. It's not everything for everyone. And so I appreciate that there are people that are vocal and so it's I think the last couple of years has really for me been again just like learning, absorbing, and going back into a little bit of student mode. I still teach one class a week, but I don't tour anymore. I took a big break from that, and I'm just sort of like absorbing. I'm just sponging for a little while.
That makes sense. I mean, we evolve as people and we need to allow ourselves the time to catch up with that. So,
Yeah.
and to kind of like you said, incubate. That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
When did you start teaching?
I started teaching probably 7 years ago,
Wow.
6 or 7 years ago. Yeah.
So like a couple years after you started. 2 or 3
Yeah,
years after.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and at that time, there weren't very many people teaching. And like I say, there like advanced tricks were at the time crazy for us, but it was like literally the day that I got a shoulder mount, I like freaked out. That was like the biggest deal. That was my
It is a big
nemesis
deal.
trick for forever. I know. And now people are like, oh my God, I learned my shoulder mount in like my 4th month. And like, I couldn't even just whatever.
I did it. Yeah. No.
You know what I mean? It's a different world. But yeah, I started teaching, and then a few years after I started teaching, and I was teaching a lot. I was teaching probably like 7 or 8 classes a week, and I just couldn't get enough, and I loved it, and I thought it was so much fun, and I was learning so much about being a teacher, and it was just such a positive and incredibly rewarding experience for me. At the same time, the blog was gaining in viewership a lot. And it was just a really natural time to start touring. And so this was before people were really doing that much touring. There weren't that many people that were traveling and teaching workshops. So I was traveling and teaching workshops to people just based on what they had learned about me from my blog, which was crazy. I've done one competition, and that was like the 3rd year that I pole danced. I
Really?
I haven't done any competitions in the last, I don't know, 7 years. I did one, and it was pole ask, and it doesn't even count because the winner is based on like audience participation. So it's not a competition in the sense that most people would think of a
It's like
competition.
someone sitting there and giving you scores. It's like a fun irreverent competition. Okay.
Yeah, totally. I was a sexy housefly, like that.
I love it.
I like did twerking in my routine, like it wasn't serious. So I haven't done any competitions or anything, and it was just people were like, hey, I really like your vibe. I like the way you break stuff down on your blog. It makes a lot of sense. Like, can you come out and teach? So I did that. I loved it, and I had zero life balance because I was working 9 to 5, and then just about every weekend I was going and teaching in a different studio, right? So I would like leave on Friday at 7 p.m. and I would fly somewhere and teach workshops, probably 5 or 6 workshops over the course of a day and a half, and then I would head back on Sunday afternoon. So it was bananas. It was super fun, and I loved it, and it was such a good time. But I did that for a little while, and then
It's not really sustainable.
yeah, and it's not sustainable, and you kind of have to wonder why you are working that hard, right? Like, and some people just love to push themselves that hard, but my body was just like over it. My boyfriend was over it. I never saw my dog. Like, it was too much. So I stopped teaching. workshops, I got another job. And so also, like, when you chart what's happened in my pole life, it always mirrors what's happening with my career, right? So, like, at just about this time, I got a job working at a startup that was crazy, crazy hours and super fun and amazing, but I had not a second of spare time. So that was when I stopped teaching, I stopped touring, and I was maybe taking one class a week if I was lucky, maybe two classes a week as a student. Um, and then only just recently I left that job about a year and a half ago. I left that job and I started teaching at a new studio in Brooklyn called Incredible, which is amazing. The two owners there started the studio because they were part of a pole community in Brooklyn at another studio. The owner decided to close the studio down. And so there were all these students that were completely displaced that all loved each other, that had been, growing friendships and everything for the last 2 years. So the two owners of my studio actually found this space and started it, like, literally to give their community a place to be.
Students.
Yeah, they were students.
Oh my gosh.
And they opened the studio, and so, like, the vibe is just love, and it's like the most inclusive and most amazing and super fun studio, and I love being part of it. And that was sort of like, it was just the right time. I was like, I kind of want to teach again, but I want it to be somewhere that's like really fun, where people just love being in class, and it's silly and it's not competitive and it's not perfect. And I want for it to be a place that's just like how when I first started teaching and taking pole, like it was relaxed and people did it because they loved it, so it was like an amazing timing moment where I was ready and I sort of put it out in the universe, and then all of a sudden it was in my social media feed, like, hey, new studio in Brooklyn with 14-foot ceilings, hey, come on, like, so yeah, it all happened.
That's cool. So you have really been on both sides where you overdid it and then kind of came through and have seemed to have found the balance. And all of this time you were in a career, you were full time. So this all happened bounced around. Wow. Do you have advice for all of us who actually have careers, and a majority of us who have careers or work and who still like, what advice can you give to us to not burn out, say, or be able to pursue things to,
I mean,
abilities?
It's so hard, it's so hard. And I see so many people that are putting in the hours, and, the struggle is so real. And I feel like, especially with people, I'm turning 35 next year. I feel like people that are sort of 25 to like 40, we're all part of this generation where we're being told by everyone, like, do what you love, do what you're passionate about. But it's really hard to figure that out, like you go through all of this schooling and you're never being given tools to explore, like, what do you love to do and how can you capitalize on that? Like, I studied marketing when I was in college. What the hell? Like, nobody ever told me, like, hey, when you graduate college, you're going to have this like really low tier entry level marketing job, and it's going to be the worst grunt work ever, and it's going to be nothing like what you studied in college, and you're going to hate it. Nobody ever gave me that career counseling, so it's tough. It's like, I think there's a real big disconnect, especially in the States, between like what you're being told to pursue when you grow up and the support you're being given, education and counseling to figure that all out. And I think it's also hard because we're sort of in this time where I think there's a little bit of villainy around like having a full-time job. I think it's like the glamour is in being an entrepreneur and doing your own thing. And, the last company that I worked for, all we did was create co-working spaces for entrepreneurs. Like, I've seen like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of square feet of office space filled with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs. And a lot of them worked their asses off, like, to the bone. It's not easy being an entrepreneur. And I feel like there's this perception that passion and money, that there's a trade-off there, and that's okay, and that's acceptable, and that's what we should be prepared for. And I think, when I was really looking at pole as a full-time career, it just didn't make sense for me. Like, and I had a moment where I could have done it. I was in grad school. This is when I was in Columbia and I was getting my degree in motor learning, and it would have been a perfect time to sort of leverage that into something in movement and to just leave corporate life entirely. I was booked every weekend for teaching workshops, and I kind of sat down and I was like, this is amazing and I'm so blessed to have this opportunity, but there are other sides of me that aren't fully fulfilled by teaching and aren't fully fulfilled by the pole community. One of them is like, I am a super type A, organized, like, and I feel like if I don't have an outlet for that part of me, then I like pole people are not prepared to deal with type A Amy. You know what I mean? Like I need some serious stuff to plan and to manage, or that kind of goes haywire. So when I was really looking at like, okay, what am I really fulfilled by? What do I really love? It was like, I really love being part of this community. I really love learning. I really love laughing with other people. Do I need for that to be my job? And do I need to find a way to make money from that? Like, no, not really. So I decided to kind of go the opposite way and say, you know what, I'm going to bust ass in my career and I'm going to do great so that one day, hopefully earlier than most, I have flexible hours. I have a ton of income that's disposable. I can travel wherever I want. I've got weekends free. I've got evenings free. I can take as many classes as I want. I can take privates. I can travel and like take workshops. I can do whatever. And this career is going to enable me while at the same time allow me to have this, type A Amy side. So it's tough, I really appreciate people that are doing the hustle. I just think for everyone, it's so individual. You have to really think about why you're working so hard. I don't think that the goal in life is to do what you love for 120 hours a week. I don't, and I think I might be unpopular in saying that, but I feel like the sooner that you can find something that pays you so that you can really enjoy the rest of your life, the better off you are. I mean, I think that's tough in pole.
I think that, and this is one of the many reasons I wanted to have you on, because I think we have gotten the perspective of, I quit my job, I'm pursuing this, I'm hustling, and that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, totally.
But it's not everyone's story, and it doesn't have to be everyone's story, and you can still pursue it even as you are above being a student, but still as like a secondary pursuit, not as you live in New York City. I mean, you want to like go out to eat, you want to like
that's real. You can't live in like
have some cute outfits.
You can't live in a major metro and like be a pole instructor full time and like really be fine. Like, and there are people who do it, and this is not by any means a judge. Like, live your life. Yeah. You know what I mean? Live your life. But like, I live in a really expensive city, and girl, like my rent is like most people's, like more than most people's mortgage. Like it's ridiculous here, and that's just the reality of living in New York. I have a really close friend who I adore, who was in New York, was like, this is killing me. I don't know why I'm working so hard for this. Moved to Memphis, bought a place so that she could continue to pursue teaching movement, right? Because it's like, if you can't change your income variable, you have to change your expense variable. And so that's what she did. She was like, I'm going to do the math. This doesn't make any sense. I can teach people over Skype. Like, and that's where I think it's really tough. Like, people want to have it all, and I think that that's super natural, but it's just really hard. And once you hit a certain point in your life, I can totally see if I was like 25, 27, 28, like, I'll sacrifice a ton of stuff to do this. But now I'm like, okay, I make enough money where if I want to go and take a pole vacation, I can do it and not worry about it, and that's something that I get to do, and it's a great benefit and it's a perk. And
everyone's life is different, and so don't look at other people's and think that's how you should be running yours. Some people should be pursuing as entrepreneurs, but some people should just really be comfortable or you shouldn't feel guilty just having pole as a hobby. You don't have to,
Yeah.
you know what you said before, that people feel like they have to, oh, well, it's my passion, so I have to like be so
Yeah.
passionate about it. Like, nah, you can just
All
be
the time.
passionate about it, like, and like work your job and like have your family and like
Yeah.
have other hobbies too. Like, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
like passion to the extreme. So
Yeah.
you
And
figured it
you know what?
out.
And it's real too because, and I'm sure you've had people on. I haven't listened to all of your podcasts, but I listened to a bunch of them, and I think people have to really figure out what their long-term strategy is, right? If you're like, yo, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna go so hard for like the next 5, 6, 7 years, and I'm gonna compete my ass off, and I'm gonna do all the things, and I'm going to have like a social media posting calendar, and I'm going to stick to that shit, and every day I'm putting something on Instagram, and I'm doing all of this stuff, and this is going to be my hustle, then awesome. But then what are you going to do, right? Like, because pole is so intense on your body, and it's not good. It's not straight up. It's not good for anybody to be moving and to just be doing pole dance for like 20, 30 hours a week. Your body will fall apart no matter how much self-care you exercise. So what are the talents that you're leveraging? Are you doing all of this touring and teaching to be able to create, I don't know, a certification program? Are you just trying to get to as far as you can, and then you're just going to tell your grandkids about it? Or, like, what's the goal? Because I think it's really easy to get sucked up and like, oh my gosh, I'm Insta famous. I have so many followers. All these brands are reaching out to me and they want to like send me free clothes. It's like, okay, that's cool, but free clothes from pole companies does not pay the rent, So like, how are you going to make money? How are you going to be happy doing this and being stable? Because that's a real desire, and there's nothing wrong with wanting financial stability. Yeah.
I agree with you, and I loved the anecdote about your friend that moved to Memphis. I mean, PSO sent out their, and this is American centric or North American centric, but they sent out their map of where the studios are around the country, and I'm sure there's this internationally too. I'm just not aware of it to be able to say where you can find it. But it was funny because I was looking like at where all the pole studios are, and I'm like, there are like just states where there's no pole studios still, like large, So moving to Memphis, that was pretty smart of her to like, maybe being a big fish in a small pond, and maybe understanding. I think another thing is I love how you said that you prefer to teach over performing, and that you haven't even competed, because I have noticed some of my favorite teachers, who I think are the most effective teachers, are not pole stars, and that's no shade on pole stars, but it's saying if you love teaching, like you don't have to be like you said, stressing yourself out to like do this, like making yourself huge on social media or something. Like, if that's what feeds your soul, focus on the teaching, because you are like making such an impact doing that, and maybe that's where you would be more happy.
Yeah, and I think that it's funny too, because when you look at sort of what's happened with competitions, right? Like, I feel like 5 years ago, everybody was competing. It was like, you have to compete and you have to win something so that you can tour. That was like the big drive. It was like everyone was trying to do that. And now there's so many competitions, and it's so hard to get visibility from doing competitions that it's interesting that now it's shifted to like social media presence, right? Like, if you build a large following, then that seems to be like the next new big step for people. Like, if I have enough followers and if I have enough friends on Facebook and I get enough likes on stuff, then this is how I'm going to build and get traction in order to get booked for workshops. So it's just a really interesting thing to watch everybody evolve and change. And
it's fascinating. I love, I want to talk about your workshop, because I feel like that's something that I have loved that I'm seeing emerge, because workshops where they're or vacations, or the full vacations and everything, I love that they're becoming more accessible to people of all levels too, because I have this thing where I don't take workshops from major people, because I don't want them to know that like I struggle doing kind of really basic tricks. And so, but now they're like, like Lux ATL has her strip strip craft, yeah. And
Uh-huh.
so, and I've noticed there's been these other emerging,
Yeah.
like pole vacations or pole workshops that you can take. It's starting to cater to all different types of dancers, and not and us dancers that are just doing this as like a passion hobby, not as a
Yeah.
trying to win competitions, which is cool. So tell us about yours.
Okay, so Pole and Bound is the name of the retreat, and we just had the fifth one in Arizona at Prowess with Lindsay's amazing studio, and so we do two a year. We do one in May and one in like October or November. So the whole retreat idea started because I was touring, and it was like I would go to these studios where like there were just amazing pole dancers taking my workshops, and I was just legit stunned. Like I could take class with you, so like this makes me feel awkward, right? Like I I'm getting paid to teach you this one thing that I'm really good at, right? And that I've created a workshop around, but you are clearly phenomenal at this whole range of other things that I can't do. And so it became this idea that everybody has something to contribute and everybody has something to teach. And you may not realize it, and that's probably the most difficult part for people that are applying, but everybody has something that they're great at, and they just may not realize what it is, right? So there's that like soul searching piece. But so the way that we do it is for the first one, it was you just had to send in an application with two workshops that you could see yourself teaching, and the only requirements were that you had to be able to do an elbow grip Aisha, and that you could hold like a 10-second handstand, something like that, like super basic. And it was just to make sure that everybody was operating at a certain level of like body awareness and strength, because having beginners through like expert level is really difficult. And the first one was, it was me pulling from a lot of people that I knew from touring and from all over the whole community, who I knew were phenomenal people, just super positive, community minded, like love to learn, love to share, love to laugh, and like just enjoy positivity. We did the first retreat at Rising Goddess, and it was right on the suburbs of Chicago. The two owners, Michelle and Barb, like sort of, I posted this thing on Facebook, and I was like, hey guys, I have this fantasy where a studio gives a studio time for free for an entire weekend, and like 15 instructors come together and we all just teach each other all weekend. And there were so many, it was like 200 comments on this post, and a ton of them were studio owners that were like, oh, I'll totally volunteer my studio. When is it? Like,
Wow.
let us know, we'll do it. And Barb and Michelle, they really stood out because they were like, they reached out to me personally. They said how into this idea that they were, how much it embodied everything their studio was about. And so we like, over a bunch of phone calls, we put the whole thing together, and it was crazy. I had people that like completely sight unseen, hadn't met me before. Half of the people who came to the first one hadn't even met me. Half of them were people that I knew, and we all just showed up in Chicago on the same weekend, and we taught each other workshops, and it was super fun, and it was super, super, super cool. And before we had even left, we were all like, oh my God, let's plan another one. So we did. So we've been doing that. And so every time we have a retreat, I try to do 50 to 60% people that have been to an Unbound, because there's like a cultural element, right? Like people who understand what the vibe is and who understand the positivity and can bring the energy. And then the rest are all new applicants, and it's still the same. We still just ask people to send in two workshops that they want to teach. And can you do an elbow grip Aisha? And then all of the people that have attended an Unbound, we all vote blind, no names attached, just what are the workshops that you want to take. And then that's it. So we do like a Thursday through Monday. We've had a few different cities. We did Raleigh at Aradia Fitness with Dakota Fox, her studio. We did Smoking Mirrors Fitness in Orange County. We did Canada at Monique's studio, She Pole Dance. And we're finalizing our locations for next year. But I mean, really, the whole point of it is I might be the facilitator, I might be organizing it, but I'm just a participant, right? Like I'm on the same level as everybody else who's there. And there are people that have won like this and that and this and that, and there are people that have never left their local pole community, who've never left their local city, who like are just awesome and great and giving and phenomenal teachers and super fun. But they're not, pole celebrities, right? And everybody who comes together, we're all seeing each other as equals. We're all there to learn, and it's just been like literally the thing that keeps me going in pole, because it's so hard to find people for whom community is like one of the driving forces of why they're still around. And having these people, I might leave the weekend, but I'm still like, every time I see something on Instagram that's super bendy, I'm like tagging my friend Mary, who's been to Unbounds with me, or every time I see something like crazy handstand thing, I'm tagging Jewel or Drew or whoever. And it's like, you don't lose touch, right? Like everyone's busy. We all might not be on constant email threads, but it's like, to know that there are people out there who are just as excited about learning and coming together it's just been awesome. Yeah.
I feel like you maybe unknowingly, maybe knowingly, but recreated those early days of the community threads and groups that you liked so much, that were small and intimate and really like fun. And as things grew, you created it in person. Did you know you did that?
Yeah. I didn't realize I did that. You're so smarty. But it's like, it's hard. Like you go on Instagram, it's like people have these like challenges and they have all this stuff, and it's like, yeah, but it's so nice when like you've got your buds who are like, you post something and they're like, dude, that looks so much better than da da da, or like, when there are people that just have you in their mind and are just thinking about you and care about you. And that's sort of like, I think we gotta come together in more personal ways and more long form ways in order to like really have those bonds. And it has to be around, positive environments where that kind of stuff can happen. So, especially with pole classes nowadays, I don't know how it is in LA, right? But like
I'm in Austin now.
Oh, you're in Austin now?
So different, yeah.
I mean, it's like night and day, right, compared to LA?
Oh my, I can't even. Yeah, it's so different. It's been a big adjustment, not in a bad way, and like not just in a different way. Made me realize. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, I think that there's just, I feel like there's been a lot of changes in New York. There are a couple of studios that just recently closed here, and
same in LA. Just happened as well.
Right, and it's like there's all the people who opened studios like 3 to 5 years ago and didn't know much about running studios and maybe were doing it just for the love. Like I'm seeing a lot of that sort of like shrinking back up, and I think it's just getting really tough out there, to be a business person and to run a studio and to have all this stuff going on. And so there have been a lot of changes in the New York community, a lot of changes in the student base. There aren't as many consistent students, it feels like.
I was just going to ask, what's the difference? What have you noticed? That it's just a novelty still, or people can't invest in it as...
I don't know. I think it's tough because I think every studio brings such a different flavor of what they're offering, right? So like Incredible, like I've mentioned, is a really lighthearted, and I mean, it's serious in that the instruction is still great, right? But it's
not
lighthearted.
negligent.
Right? We sign waivers, I promise. But it's just, I think it's tough to get people coming back all the time. And especially nowadays, there's so much boutique fitness, and there's like ClassPass and Fit Reserve, and there's this idea that sort of all these niche classes are exchangeable and swappable for one another. So I think it's hard when you need to spend so much time with students to get them over that like 10 class hump, where they're actually like really beginners. It's really tough to get that person coming back 10 times when they've got, they're going to flywheel and they're going to, I don't know, rowing, and they're doing CrossFit, yoga, and they're doing all this other stuff. So I think that there's this perception that that pole is just one of many things that people are doing, whereas when I was doing it, it was like the only thing I did. Like people weren't as fit 10 years ago. They just weren't. Like,
Well, maybe
Pilates and CrossFit and all that didn't really exist in the same way. So I don't know.
it's a different world, and it probably has something to do with what you said earlier about people being more entrepreneurial and doing what they love, and people love fitness, I guess. So a lot of people are opening fitness studios. It just makes it a more highly competitive market. But there was something about when you started at S Factor in New York that hooked you, you know? So it's kind of like, well, what is it that hooked you that maybe a current studio is not hooking people? I mean, there's something in that too. I think you have a point about your passion being, or your motivation being in more niche, smaller communities. So maybe it is something there where, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's tough because you have to get people to commit to pull them in.
Yes.
Right. And when I first started, S Factor does an 8-week series. So you're signing up for the same time every week, and you're with the same girls every week. And that's a huge part of it, is that you become friends with all these people. And the first studio that I taught at in New York was the same. It was an 8-week session. It was one class, 1 hour every week. And I had the same girls signing up every single time. And it was like a family.
Yeah.
And everything that I see now is drop in. And I know it's tough. Like, I'm not telling studio owners, I'm not telling studio owners, like, you have to have sessions, because I'm not writing the checks for the studio. So I'm going to keep my mouth shut on it. But I think that it does make it really tough for people to feel that community if, you know, they're not seeing the same people all the time. And then the rapport that you're building is just with your instructor, and not necessarily with the other students. And that's just a different dynamic, right? It's just a different exchange. And some instructors aren't, they're not down for that. You know, they're coming because they like to teach, but they're not trying to make friends with their students. And that's a tough line for people too. So
yeah, I think that, and I'm not a studio owner either, so I'm take this with a grain of salt.
Right? All the studio owners out
there. Sorry guys. And definitely we're talking about this because we want to see more studios, and we want to see success, and we want to see it grow. And, you know, my experience is talking to a lot of people in the community from all over. And so what I hear time and time again is that people love pole because of the community, and because of how that class makes them feel that something that they can't get from a fitness class. So I think something like a flywheel, or like a CrossFit type of situation, like, you can do those as drop-ins. The drop-ins may be more successful because you're just like, I'm here to get shredded. I don't give a shit about anyone else. But, like, you don't really hear that from pole dancers. Like, my favorite thing is that, like, I got guns. Like, it's a byproduct and it's awesome. But people seem to really like the tribal aspect of it more. So take with that as you will.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to do, to open a studio. So we commend everyone, and we want everyone to be successful.
Right. And there's that whole, like, pole fitness, pole dancing dichotomy where it's like, again, like, if you're just going to get shredded, then maybe you're not that invested in the studio.
Exactly. Was that a thing back when you started? Was it a pole dance, pole fitness, or is it just like, it's a place with a pole, we don't even have the privilege to...
Yeah, if there's a pole in the room, then they're going to call it stripper dance anyway, so who cares, you know? Like, you can label it what you want, but everybody just called it pole dancing back then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so what's your trajectory moving forward? Do you feel like you've kind of come to a point where you're really happy with the balance you've made, or any big plans? The blog's still going, even if
the blog is still going. I have been, you know, like, back and forth throwing thoughts around about sort of reviving some of that. So that's a maybe. We'll see.
Yeah.
And I think I'm in a really good place. Like, I definitely see Unbound continuing. I definitely see Amy the Learner continuing. I still love teaching my one class a week, and it's a beginner 2 class, so I love teaching beginners. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm sort of along for the ride a little bit.
That's
I'm
awesome.
taking a back seat and seeing what happens in pole. Yeah,
Good for you. You seem really happy and balanced at the moment. So it's
at the
nice to
moment.
know that, well, yeah, that you've gotten
Yeah,
there. You've put in the work to get there and have figured it out. So you
yeah.
are a great example to a lot of people, I think. Yeah. So let's jump into the second part of the podcast where I ask the same questions.
Cool.
And I'm curious because you probably know a lot of dancers, but who is your pole crush?
So, like, I totally saw this question on your list, and I was like, oh, I have no idea what I'm going to say. And then I actually didn't read all the questions because I wanted to react, honestly. Um, I think so. One of my longtime pole crushes has been Yvonne Smink.
Mhm.
I have been following her for a long, long time. She's a phenomenal person. She's a phenomenal instructor, and um, I think that what she does is so interesting because she's taking things that we think of as like, like sexy pole, and she's doing like an octopus routine that's not traditionally sexy at all. Or she's doing a routine where she's exploring like kinetic movement, and there happens to be a pole and she's doing crazy pole work, but it's really a different animal completely. So I love her mind. I mean, her technical ability is bar none, but I think somebody like her who marries that technical ability to just this like such a curious mind, and
She's
is so
innovative.
thirsty. Yeah, she's so thirsty to just keep bringing it. And I think she's influencing so many people, and she's really inspiring so many people. I think she's great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good choice. And how would you
Yeah.
like to see the pole community evolve over the next 5 years?
Oh man. Um, I think I think what I would love to see is sort of a contraction. I feel like we've done a lot of expanding, and I feel like that's been tremendous for our growth. But I think, based on sort of what we've been talking about with keeping community ties alive and with what keeps people involved, I think that there needs to be something beyond Facebook and something beyond Instagram. I think there needs to be a better way for us to communicate and connect with one another, and for people to really feel like they're not alone. And it's tough nowadays. There's so much static. Like I said, there's so much going on, and it's hard to find the 8 poll posts in my entire feed on Facebook, and I think that it would be cool for us to figure out a way to connect, I think, more directly with one another and more often.
Nice. And in person is always nice.
Yes.
That's,
Yeah, totally.
it's where the retreats come in. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything coming up that you want to share with the audience that you haven't mentioned yet?
Um, well, we're going to be announcing the Unbound locations for 2017 for spring and fall in the next couple of weeks. So in early January, there should be an announcement around that, and then we'll be opening applications for the May Unbound. So if anybody is interested in joining us and being part of it, it's really like every ability level, every location. We have somebody who comes from England, we have a Canadian, we have people from all over the United States. So would love to have more people join us. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to put all of your social media and contact information in the show notes so people can make sure that
Cool.
they're like signed up for your newsletter and on your social media so they catch that. Because
Cool. Thank you.
I think, probably a lot of people aren't aware that that was even something that
I
you were
know.
doing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so before we sign off, can you leave us with an empowering message or a quote or a story?
Oh, damn. All that I'm going to say is that um, I started pole like 10 years ago, and I never worked out in my life, and I was bad at everything that I ever did athletic wise. Like I was was bad at the 100-meter hurdles, and I was bad at the 400-meter. Like I was not good at anything. And I found pole, and it's just opened up so much in my life. I've done, like I said, one competition. You know, I've never been hesitant on like just pursuing and learning and trying new stuff and working at it. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to love pole, as long as they focus on themselves and what they're getting out of it and what they're learning, and not putting themselves in relation to anyone else or anything else. I just want for people to realize like pole is just whatever you want it to be. And at the end of the day, as long as you're happy, then fuck everybody else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Don't forget, you have a life outside of pole. Don't neglect it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Hug your puppies.
Yeah.
Hug your cat. Hug your significant others, and eat a lot of food.
No one's ever ended on that before.
Yeah.
I think that's like,
eat a lot of food.
that's my favorite sign off ever. Eat a lot of food. You've earned it. Especially because it's the holiday season, and this is going to be the last podcast of 2016. So
Yay.
I'm so happy that you were our last guest, and we're all going to go eat, drink, be merry, dance. Hopefully appropriately in the presence of our family members, and we'll come back in 2017. So thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Pole Parlour podcast. Want more? Visit poleparlour.com for show notes and to link to the Facebook group where you can connect with other poloholics and continue the conversation. Listen to past episodes and subscribe to new episodes on the website, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud. Lots of love, babes. Thanks for listening.